I sometimes close my eyes and I'm there again, walking down a snow-covered main street sometime in December 1974. The cold nipping gently at my cheeks, the smell of roasted chestnuts mixing with pine and peppermint, and the sound of distant Christmas carols floating on the crisp winter air. The 1970s were a time unlike any other, and nowhere was that magic felt more deeply than during the holidays. Christmas and New Year's back then weren't about speed or screens or online shopping. They were about ritual and rhythm, about anticipation that built slowly and beautifully from the day after Thanksgiving until the last piece of tinsel was taken down sometime in January. They were about togetherness, tradition, and a kind of joy that seemed to settle into every corner of our homes and hearts. Hello and welcome. You're watching Retro Days with David, a place where I share my passion for the past and celebrate the timeless stories, sounds, and spirit that shaped this country. From the golden age of classic cars to the unforgettable music and cultural milestones that define generations, this channel is dedicated to honoring those memories. If you're visiting for the first time, I invite you to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss any of my upcoming journeys into America's rich and fascinating history. I was a teenager in those years, maybe 16 or 17, and I can still feel the electric excitement that filled the air as soon as December arrived. Everything seemed to change overnight. The hardware store downtown strung multicolored bulbs across its windows. The 5 and dime replaced its usual display with rows of toy trains, tin robots, and shiny red wagons. And every lamppost down Main Street was wrapped in garlands and lights, topped with glowing stars or bells that twinkled like they had been plucked straight from a storybook. There was a particular kind of magic to those holiday nights. The snow didn't just fall. It drifted lazily through the light of the street lamps, swirling gently in the wind like it had nowhere else to be. Storefronts glowed warm and golden against the cold, each one filled with holiday displays that seemed to compete for your imagination. Some were elaborate winter wonderlands with mechanical elves hammering away in toy workshops. Others were simple but charming. A few flickering candles, a nativity scene, or a Christmas tree heavy with silver tinsel and oversized glass ornaments that caught the light like jewels. We didn't rush from place to place the way people do now. We wandered, we lingered. My friends and I would spend hours walking downtown in the evenings, hands stuffed into mittened pockets, pausing to press our noses to frosted shop windows. We'd talk about what we hoped to find under the tree that year. Maybe a new record player, a leather-bound journal, or the latest Polaroid camera. But deep down, we knew the gifts were only part of the story. What really mattered was the feeling, the laughter, the warmth, the sense that for a few weeks the whole world slowed down and leaned into joy. And oh, the decorations. Christmas in the 70s had a style all its own. A glorious mix of old-fashioned charm and space-age optimism. Houses glowed with strings of oversized C9 bulbs in red, green, blue, and orange, the kind that gave off just a hint of warmth you could feel on your hand if you held it close. Aluminum trees, popular earlier in the decade, stood proudly in living rooms, their shiny silver branches reflecting the colorful glow of rotating light wheels that painted them in shifting hues of blue, green, and red. And tinsel, so much tinsel, draped over every branch, catching the glow of Christmas lights and making the whole tree shimmer like freshly fallen snow. There was something comforting about how homemade everything felt. Sure, you could buy decorations in stores, but many of us made our own. Paper snowflakes taped to windows, construction paper chains stretching across mantels, popcorn and cranberry garlands strung carefully on sewing thread, all crafted by hand during cozy family evenings, while holiday specials played softly on the television. Every ornament seemed to carry a story. The little wooden soldier my father carved one year, the glass angel my mother had since she was a girl, the glitter-covered pine cone I made in kindergarten and insisted on hanging front and center every single year. Speaking of television, nothing set the mood for the season quite like it. We didn't have hundreds of channels or streaming platforms, but we didn't need them. Each December brought a handful of specials that everyone watched together. A Charlie Brown Christmas reminded us that the holiday was about more than commercialism. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and Frosty the Snowman filled living rooms with laughter and music. And when It's a Wonderful Life came on, usually just a few days before Christmas Eve, families gathered in silence, passing around mugs of cocoa and letting the warmth of that black and white story wash over them like a familiar carol. Music was everywhere too, not just background noise, but a vital part of the season. Radios hummed with classics from Bing Crosby, Perry Como, and Andy Williams, while newer hits from the Carpenters or John Denver slipped into the rotation. Vinyl records spun on console stereos, filling living rooms with the sounds of sleigh bells, choirs, and orchestras. I can still hear the gentle crackle of a record needle settling into the groove before the first notes of Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas floated through the house. There was no playlist, no algorithm, just a collection of songs passed down through generations, each one tied to 1,000 memories. And then, of course, there was shopping, a holiday tradition in its own right. Forget the frantic online carts and 2-day shipping of today. Back then, Christmas shopping was an event, a ritual you looked forward to all year. Department stores like Sears, Montgomery Ward, and J.C. Penney transformed into magical wonderlands, their aisles lined with toys, gadgets, clothes, and holiday treats. The annual Sears Wish Book catalog was practically sacred. Hundreds of glossy pages filled with treasures to dream about. My siblings and I would spend hours poring over it, circling toys and arguing over which one Santa was most likely to bring. Shopping trips downtown were a family affair. We'd bundle up in scarves and heavy coats, drive through the snow in our station wagon, and spend the whole afternoon wandering from store to store. Bells jingled cheerfully above every doorway, and the smell of cinnamon and pine seemed to follow us wherever we went. Afterward, we'd stop for hot chocolate at Woolworth's lunch counter, our cheeks flushed from the cold, our arms loaded with carefully wrapped packages. There was no rush, no stress, just the joy of choosing gifts with love and imagining the smiles they'd bring on Christmas morning. By mid-December, the season was in full swing. School let out for winter break, and those 2 weeks felt like pure freedom. We'd spend afternoons sledding down neighborhood hills until our fingers were numb, then come home to steaming mugs of cocoa and the smell of cookies baking in the oven. Evenings were reserved for decorating, wrapping gifts, or visiting neighbors to deliver tins of homemade fudge and peppermint bark. And everywhere, absolutely everywhere, there was light. Strings of bulbs draped from porches, glowing plastic Santas stood watch on lawns, and every window seemed to frame a Christmas tree twinkling like a beacon in the night. Christmas Eve was always the most magical night of the year. The house would be spotless, the tree glowing softly in the corner, and the kitchen alive with the smells of roasting turkey and spiced cider. Relatives would begin to arrive just after dusk. Uncles with boom and laughter, aunts carrying casseroles, cousins bundled in winter coats and scarves. The house would fill with noise and warmth, the clink of dishes, the pop of champagne corks, and the sound of familiar stories told for the 100th time. After dinner, we'd gather in the living room for what felt like the heart of the season, exchanging gifts, not the biggest or most expensive, but the most thoughtful, a handmade scarf, a favorite book, a photo album filled with memories, and always, always the stockings, each one filled with little surprises, chocolate coins wrapped in gold foil, candy canes, tiny toys, and maybe a few crisp dollar bills folded neatly at the bottom. Then, as the night grew late and the younger kids grew sleepy, we'd read "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" by the glow of the tree lights, the words as familiar and comforting as the warmth of the fire. Christmas morning was a symphony of joy. The sky outside might still be dark when we woke, but the house felt alive. The smell of fresh coffee and cinnamon rolls wafted from the kitchen. Wrapping paper rustled and tore as children shouted with delight over new bikes, dolls, and board games. Parents smiled over practical gifts, a new robe, a set of tools, maybe a pair of leather gloves. The television played a loop of holiday music, and somewhere in the distance church bells rang, their sound floating softly on the cold morning air. The rest of the day was a blur of happiness, phone calls to relatives far away, long walks through snowy neighborhoods, and an endless feast that seemed to last from noon until night. And through it all, there was laughter, deep, genuine laughter, the kind that bubbles up from the heart and fills a room with warmth. It was the sound of family, of friendship, of love. New Year's had a magic of its own. While Christmas was about tradition and home, New Year's Eve was about possibility, the promise of a blank slate, a fresh start, a whole new year stretching out before you. We'd gather with friends or neighbors, crowding into living rooms decorated with silver streamers and balloons. There was always music, maybe Elton John or Fleetwood Mac spinning on the turntable, and plenty of food, cheese balls, cocktail sausages, deviled eggs, and punch bowls filled with sparkling cider. Televisions were tuned to Guy Lombardo or Dick Clark's New Year's Rockin' Eve, and as the clock crept toward midnight, excitement built like a drum roll. We'd count down to final seconds together. 10, 9, 8. Voices growing louder with each number until the room exploded with cheers and laughter at the stroke of 12. Balloons dropped, champagne corks popped, and hugs were exchanged all around. Outside, fireworks lit up the winter sky, their reflections dancing in the snow, and for a few perfect moments, everything felt possible. January 1st was a quieter day, but no less special. We'd sleep in late, then gather for a big family breakfast, pancakes, bacon, and fresh squeezed orange juice, before settling in to watch the Rose Parade on TV, the floats, the marching bands, the endless stream of color and pageantry. It was the perfect way to start a new year. And as the day faded into evening and the last of the holiday decorations began to come down, there was always a bittersweet feeling. The season was ending, but the memories, the laughter, the warmth, the love would linger long after the last ornament was packed away. Looking back now, I realize that what made those holidays so special wasn't the gifts or the decorations or even the food. It was the time spent together, time spent slowing down, time spent savoring the simple joys of the season. It was a different pace of life, one that felt richer and deeper precisely because it wasn't rushed. And though the world has changed, and changed dramatically, since those days, the heart of the holidays remains the same. It's still about love and laughter, about family and friendship, about hope and new beginnings. Today, the lights are brighter, the music louder, and the ways we celebrate more varied than ever. We can video call loved ones from thousands of miles away. We can order gifts from around the world with a few taps on a screen. We can stream endless holiday movies and create playlists that last for days. And all of that is wonderful, truly. But sometimes I still find myself longing for the quiet magic of those 1970s Christmases and New Years, for the way snow looked under the glow of colored lights, for the taste of cocoa after an afternoon of sledding, for the sound of my family's laughter echoing through a house filled with love, because that's what the holidays really are. Not a date on a calendar, not a list of traditions, but a feeling. And that feeling, that deep, glowing warmth that starts in your chest and spreads through every part of you, is timeless. It's the same now as it was then. And every December, when the first carols start to play and the first snow begins to fall, I close my eyes and I'm back there once more, a teenager in the 1970s, standing under twinkling lights, dreaming of the future, and knowing beyond a doubt that the best is yet to come. Thank you for spending this time with me and taking a step back into the world of retro America. If you enjoyed revisiting the moments, eras, and stories that helped shape our lives, please consider subscribing, liking this video, and turning on notifications. There's so much more to explore together. And I'd truly love to hear from you in the comments. Which decade holds the fondest memories for you? The classic 50s, the transformative 60s, or the bold and changing 70s? Your stories and reflections mean a lot